Your Honor, the documentation shows the device was active and logged. This establishes the connection, as detailed in the network logs.
You've seen this before. A man. A woman. A public place. You assumed you knew what it was. You were wrong. He didn't grab her out of anger. He grabbed her because someone was watching. And that someone was not supposed to be there. The watch came off slowly. Not because he was calm. Because removing it meant what happened next wouldn't be traced back to him. She knew that. She stopped struggling the moment she understood. What she said to him next, in the silence between his hands and her throat, changed everything. Not for her. For the man standing 20 feet away, pretending to look at his phone. He thought no one noticed him. The boss noticed him first. There's a detail no one is talking about. One that makes everything you just heard mean something different. Stay with me. Because you've seen this before. And you still don't know what you actually saw. The thing about being grabbed by the throat in public is that the world keeps moving. That's what I remember most. The escalator behind him kept running, carrying strangers up and down in their ordinary Saturday afternoon, and the music from the cosmetics store 2 stalls over kept playing something bright and seasonal, and 2 children were fighting over a pretzel at the food stand 40 feet away, and none of it stopped. None of it even slowed. And Chaniol's hand was around my throat. Not squeezing. That was the precision of it, the thing that made him so hard to explain to people who imagine violence as only the most extreme version of itself. He wasn't squeezing. He was just holding. Demonstrating capability. Making me aware, with that specific terrible intimacy, that he could. You don't get to block me, he said. His voice was completely normal. That was the other thing. He sounded like he was explaining a return policy. My back was against a pillar, one of the wide concrete columns between storefronts on the second floor of the mall, tucked enough from direct foot traffic that passing strangers would read it as a couple fighting and adjust their trajectory accordingly. He'd chosen the spot. I understood now that he'd been tracking me, had waited for the right geography. Chaniol. My voice came out smaller than I wanted, compressed by the hand and the fear and the 2 years of reflex that still fired when I was close to him. Let go. Why are you here? He asked. Who are you meeting? I'm shopping. Let go. Show me your phone. Let go of me. His thumb moved. Just a shift of pressure, small enough that if you were watching from 10 feet away you'd see nothing change. But I felt it, the precise reminder of who had leverage here, and I hated myself for the way my body understood it and responded with stillness, the old animal quieting. I heard footsteps. Regular, not hurried. The kind of walk that takes the full width of available space without announcing it. They stopped. Take your hand off her neck. The voice was low and even, and the interesting thing, the thing I would think about afterward, was that it didn't sound like someone inserting themselves into a scene. It sounded like someone reading a corrected version of a thing that had been stated incorrectly. Chaniol turned his head. His hand didn't move. The man standing 4 feet away was wearing a charcoal jacket and dark trousers, dressed in the expensive but invisible way of certain people, nothing that names itself, nothing that performs. He was looking at Chaniol with the kind of attention that doesn't require expression to communicate. He had a watch on his left wrist, heavy, analog, the kind with a leather strap and a face that doesn't need to be seen to be understood. As I watched, he reached with his right hand, and he began to unbuckle the watch. Not fast. The opposite of fast. Each small movement deliberate, the clasp undone, the strap drawn back, the watch lifted carefully from his wrist. He folded the strap over once and held it loosely in his right hand. He said nothing while he did this. Chaniol stared at him. Who are you? Last time. The man's voice didn't change register. Her neck. Your hand. Remove it. Something passed through Chaniol's face. I'd spent 2 years learning to read that face, and what I saw was the specific recalculation of a person who has just realized the room has changed. He looked at the watch in the man's hand. He looked at the 2 men who had materialized behind the stranger, both wearing the kind of calm that is also entirely functional. He looked back at the stranger's face. He let go of my throat. I stepped sideways immediately, away from the pillar, away from Chaniol, out of that specific pocket of geography that he'd engineered. I kept my back to nothing. The stranger glanced at me. Just once. Checking something, not damage, I think. Checking whether I was present. Whether I'd stayed in my own body. I nodded. Some instinct told me he'd understand the nod. He looked back at Chaniol. He put the watch back on his wrist. Buckled it with the same deliberate calm, one movement after another. You should know, he said to Chaniol quietly, that there are cameras on this floor. And on the floor below. And outside the parking entrance. He adjusted the buckle. Looked up. You should think carefully about where you go after you leave this building. Chaniol opened his mouth. I wouldn't, the man said. Chaniol left. He walked toward the nearest escalator with the deliberate pace of a man trying to look like he's choosing to leave rather than retreating, and I watched him go, and I realized my hands were shaking and I needed to put them somewhere, so I pressed them flat against my thighs. Are you hurt? The man asked. I turned to look at him. He was a few years older than me, early 30s, maybe, with a face that was hard to read not because it was closed but because it was organized. Things placed deliberately. Nothing accidental. My throat's fine, I said. That wasn't what I asked. I looked at him. The two men who'd stood behind him had drifted, not far, just repositioned, standing at the edges of the immediate area with their hands loose and their attention elsewhere, or appearing to be. I'm okay, I said. And then, because it was true and the truth felt important, I'm not okay. But I will be. He seemed to find this answer more satisfactory than the first. He reached into his jacket pocket and produced a card, held it out flat, the way you'd offer something to someone who has every right to decline. My name is Cha Min-jun, he said. If he comes back. I took the card. I looked at it. A name, a number, a company title in a font so small I had to tilt the card, consultant. Consultant, I said. Among other things. That was quite a lot of other things for a consultant. Something shifted near his eyes. Almost an acknowledgement. Are you parked here? He asked. Second floor east. Near the cinema. We'll walk with you. Not can I, not would you like. A statement of what was going to happen, offered matter-of-factly, in a way that left me room to object, but made it clear the offer was serious. I looked at his face. I looked at the two men positioned at the edges of what I was beginning to understand was a perimeter. All right, I said. If you've ever stood in a public place and felt completely alone in what was happening to you, and then someone stepped in, you know exactly what this moment felt like. Hit like. This story is just getting started. We walked to my car. He walked beside me, not ahead, not behind, beside, and the two men moved in a way I could only track from the corner of my eye, always enough distance to be unobtrusive, always positioned between us and the direction Chaniol had gone. How long has this been happening? Min-jun asked. We broke up 8 months ago, I said. He started, checking on me about 3 months after. Checking on you. Following. Showing up. Being where I was. Has he touched you before today? I was quiet for a moment. He had a different style before, I said. Before today was different. He didn't press. He absorbed the information. At my car, he stood back while I unlocked it. I opened the door and then stood there, because there was something that needed saying and I hadn't decided yet how to say it. Why? I said. Genuinely. You don't know me. He was quiet for a moment. I know what that looks like, he said. Someone trapped against a surface by someone who knows exactly how much pressure to apply. A pause. I've seen it before. I don't walk past it. I got in my car. Call the number, he said. If he finds your car, your workplace, your home. Call it. I started the engine. He stepped back. Cha Minjun, I said through the open window. He looked at me. Thank you, I said. He nodded once. He stepped back further. I pulled out of the space, and in my rearview mirror I watched him standing at the end of the parking row, hands in his pockets, watching my car until I turned the corner. I drove 3 blocks and pulled over and sat there for 4 minutes with my hands in my lap. Then I put his card in the small pocket of my bag. The inside one. The one where I kept things I didn't want to lose. I called the number 6 days later. Not because of Chaniol, I hadn't seen him since the mall. I called because I'd been sitting on my apartment floor at 11 p.m., going through my phone gallery deleting photos, and I'd found a video I didn't remember being taken. Me, in my kitchen, at a time I couldn't place, I was just cooking, just existing, entirely unaware. The angle was wrong for my own phone. The angle was wrong for any angle I'd ever filmed myself from. I called the number. It rang twice. Where are you? Minjun said. My apartment. I think there's a video of me. In my kitchen. I didn't take it. Silence. Brief, but dense. Is Chaniol the only person who's had access to your apartment? He had a key. From before. I changed the locks when we broke up, but I stopped. He came over once in January. I thought it was fine, it was just to get a jacket. He was only inside for 10 minutes. I'm sending someone to look at your home network. Don't connect anything to your Wi-Fi tonight. Don't open your laptop. He put something on my network? We don't know yet. His voice was entirely level. Not reassuring in the false sense, just organized. I'll be there in 40 minutes. You don't have to. I'll be there in 40 minutes, he said again, and hung up. He was there in 38. He came with a man whose name I never learned, who spent an hour methodically going through my apartment with equipment I couldn't name, and Minjun sat at my kitchen table and I made tea because I needed something to do with my hands, and we sat across from each other while the other man worked. He put a device on your router, Minjun said, when the man brought it out. Small thing. Smaller than I expected. Everything on your network. Every search, every message sent from Wi-Fi, every camera on every app. I stared at the device. For how long? I asked. Since January. 4 months. 4 months of him watching. 4 months of me existing in my own apartment thinking I was alone. I pressed my palms flat on the table. I breathed through it. The video, I said. He has the video. The device did not give him camera access, Minjun said carefully. The video, I need you to think. Is there any possibility you have a camera-enabled device near your kitchen that could have captured that angle? A laptop left open, a tablet propped. I thought carefully. My tablet, I said slowly. I use it for recipes. I prop it on the counter. And Chaniol knows this. I've cooked for him. He knows my kitchen. Minjun looked at his colleague. Some communication passed between them that I didn't have the vocabulary for. Your tablet camera may have been accessed remotely, he said. Through the compromised network. The word remotely sat in my chest like a stone. He's been watching me cook, I said. Among other things, possibly. We need to go through your device history. We did that. It took another hour. By the time his colleague left, it was past 1 in the morning and I was sitting on my couch with my knees drawn up and my hands completely still, which I discovered was what I did when I'd gone past a certain threshold of shock, not shaking, just still, the opposite of shock response, some shutdown of visible reaction. Minjun stayed. He didn't ask if I wanted company. He made more tea, he'd watched me make it and replicated the process without asking, which should have felt presumptuous and instead felt like someone paying attention, and he sat on the other end of the couch and didn't talk and didn't look at me with that specific pity that requires performance. After a while I said, how do you know how to do all of this? He considered. I've spent a long time understanding how people use access to control other people, he said. Professionally and otherwise. Professionally. I consult for companies that have security concerns. He said it with the precise weight of someone choosing words that are true and incomplete at once. The tools are similar. And otherwise? I asked. He was quiet for a moment. My mother, he said. When I was young. Someone used a similar method. I looked at him. Did it get resolved? I asked. Eventually. He held my gaze. Not quickly enough. I understood that this was the entire explanation, that the brevity of it was not evasion but the compression of something large into the smallest shape he'd found for carrying it. I'm sorry, I said. So am I. He looked at his tea. Which is why I don't walk past it. Subscribe. Because what I found out next proved that what I thought was the worst of it wasn't even close. That was how it started. He came back twice that week, once to confirm the tablet had been fully cleaned, once to tell me he'd had someone sit on Chaniol's movements and there was nothing immediately escalating. He was methodical about it, giving me information in the organized way I was coming to recognize as his specific idiom: facts first, implication second, action third, nothing withheld that was mine to know. I started to tell him things. Slowly, non-linearly, the way you give access to things that have been locked for a long time, a door cracked, then a little more. He listened with that absolute quality of attention, and he never told me how I should feel about what I was saying, which was its own form of kindness. I noticed the signals, his phone calls, short, always, never performed for my benefit, after which things simply happened. A mutual connection of Chaniol's who'd been relaying information became suddenly unavailable. A landlord Chaniol had been using as an alibi for his whereabouts grew mysteriously uncooperative. None of these were explained. None of them needed to be. The way the cafe owner on his street knew his order. The way a man I passed in the lobby of his building, once, when I'd needed to drop something off, nodded at him with the specific respect of a person reporting to someone, not greeting a neighbor. The way he moved through the city like someone who had mapped it differently than most people do, not as geography, but as network. I asked him once, directly, "Are you dangerous?" He thought about it for what felt like a genuine moment. "To you," he said. "No. That's not a complete answer." "To some people," he said, "yes." I thought about the watch. The slow, deliberate removal of it. What it had communicated to Chaniol that I'd only partially understood, the language of it, the grammar that lived under the gesture. "The watch," I said. "At the mall." "What does that mean?" He was quiet. "It means I'm going to need my hands free," he said. "And I'm not in a hurry." I sat with that. "Okay," I said. "Okay," he repeated. "I'm not afraid of you," I said. And then, more honestly, I'm afraid of being wrong about you. That's different. He looked at me across the kitchen table with those still, organized eyes. That's the correct thing to be afraid of, he said. Being wrong is the real risk. Not me. I thought about that for days. The documents arrived at my workplace. That was the thing I hadn't anticipated, the workplace. I'd been careful with my home, with my network, with my routes. But my workplace had a public-facing reception desk, and anyone could walk in and ask them to deliver an envelope, and that's what he did. I opened it at my desk at 10:15 on a Tuesday. Inside, a legal summons. I was named as a respondent in a civil harassment complaint. The complainant was Park Chaniol. The filing claimed that I had engaged in a pattern of harassing communications, unauthorized contact with his family members, and damage to his professional reputation through deliberate defamation. I read it 3 times. Then I read the date. The filing had been submitted 2 weeks ago. Weeks before he'd grabbed my throat in the mall. He'd been building this while he was following me. While the device was on my network. I photographed every page and forwarded them to Minjun, and then I sat at my desk and looked at my screen and tried to locate my own mind inside what was happening. My phone rang. Minjun. I see it, he said before I could speak. He filed 2 weeks ago, I said. He was already doing this while he was watching me. I know. This is the trap. If I try to file anything against him, if I go to the police, there's already a counterclaim in place. It looks like I'm retaliating. It looks like I'm the one. My voice broke on the last word and I stopped and breathed. Yoon Sarah, he said. My full name. He'd never used it before. Look at me. And then, after a pause, I know you can't literally look at me. I need you to hear my voice and come back. I pressed my hand over my eyes. I hear you, I said. The filing is designed to make you feel like you're out of options, he said. It's a pressure tactic. He wants you to do nothing because you're afraid of making it worse. That's what it's for. What do I do? You do nothing today, he said. Tonight I need you to write down every incident, every date, location, what happened, what was said, anyone else present. Everything from the last 8 months. Detailed. Send it to me. You have a lawyer. Several, he said. One of them specifically for this. This is going to get worse before it gets better, I said. Yes, he said. Not a comfort. A fact. But it's going to get better. Don't click away. Because what happened next, what Minjun found in those files, changed everything I thought I understood about how far Chaniol was willing to go. The lawyer's name was Attorney Beck. She was 50-something, compact, with the organized energy of someone who had long ago stopped being impressed by the ways people harm each other and simply developed efficient responses. She met with me the following afternoon in an office I found out later was in a building that Minjun's company owned. She had already read my incident timeline. She had already pulled Chaniol's public records. He's done this before, she said. I looked at her. Not the same specifics. But the pattern. She turned her tablet to show me. A previous girlfriend, 3 years ago. Filed a counterclaim when she attempted to get a restraining order. Her case was dropped. There was a settlement. She paid him? She went away, Attorney Beck said. Which was what the money was actually for. I felt sick. So he knows how to do this. He knows the playbook, she said. Which means we know it too. She outlined a counter-strategy that required documentation I had, and witnesses I would need to find, and a specific legal argument resting on the network device, which she said was the most significant piece of evidence I had. That device establishes his intent, she said. It establishes surveillance and control. If we present it correctly, his harassment claim doesn't just fail, it reframes the entire narrative. He'll escalate, I said. She looked at me directly. Yes. When we file. Within days of filing, she said. He'll try to contact you. He'll try to make you withdraw. I looked at the table. I thought about 2 years of understanding that his particular kind of control was sophisticated, patient, and organized. That he'd been planning this for months. He put a device on my network in January, I said slowly. That means he started building the legal case before he escalated to physical contact. I looked at Attorney Beck. He knew the physical contact was coming. He was building the cover story first. She was quiet. He planned them all, I said. That's a reasonable reading, she said carefully. I left the meeting and walked to the building entrance and stood on the pavement and breathed cold air and thought about a hand on my throat in a shopping mall while somewhere, already, there was a document being drafted to make me the aggressor. Minjun was leaning against the exterior wall 6 feet away. I hadn't expected him. He wasn't there in a way that suggested he'd been waiting, he was there in a way that suggested he'd arrived at the same time as me. She told you? I said. She told me what she could, he said. The rest I read in your face when you came out. I looked at the street. At the ordinary early evening of it, people with groceries and phones and the small ordinary problems of lives that didn't include someone planning their assault in advance. He planned them all, I said. I know. You knew before I said it. He was quiet. How long have you known? I asked. Since we found the router device, he said. The device was placed in January. The filing was submitted in April. There was a sequence. And you didn't tell me. I needed to confirm it fully, he said. And I needed you to hear it from Attorney Beck, with documentation, not from me, with suspicion. I turned to look at him. He was watching me with those still, measured eyes, and I thought, there is a version of this I should be angry about. There is a version of this where I say you make decisions about my life without asking me and mean it as a complaint. But I also thought about the 38 minutes. About the tea replicated exactly. About I don't walk past it. Next time, I said. Tell me sooner. All right, he said. I mean it. I know you do. He looked at me steadily. I'll tell you sooner. I looked back at the street. He's going to contact me when we file, I said. Yes. I won't be alone when that happens? He looked at me like that was the most unnecessary question I'd ever asked him. No, he said. You won't. We filed on a Thursday. Attorney Beck submitted a formal response to Chaniol's harassment claim, a counter-filing for stalking and surveillance with the network device as primary evidence, and a request for an emergency protective order citing the mall incident, the device, and the pattern dating back 8 months. By Thursday evening, Chaniol had called my phone 9 times from a number I didn't recognize. I didn't answer. I sent every call to voicemail and forwarded the voicemails to Attorney Beck without listening to them. Minjun was in my apartment. Not in a performed protective way, he was at my kitchen table with his tablet working, the same way he'd been present for difficult evenings over the past weeks, a specific quality of company that didn't require me to perform normalcy but made normalcy more accessible by existing near it. On the 10th call, I looked at my phone. Don't, Minjun said, without looking up. I know, I said. On Friday morning, Chaniol appeared at my workplace. I know this because I had an alert, something Minjun had arranged with my building's security without telling me, the kind of arrangement where a guard sends a photo to a number when certain people appear. The photo arrived on Minjun's phone and he showed it to me, Chaniol at the reception desk of my company building, talking to the front desk staff. What is he doing? I said. Checking if you're there, Minjun said. Or trying to send something up. Can he? His phone was already at his ear. A brief call. 2 sentences. He lowered the phone. He's been turned away, he said. The building manager has his details. He won't be let in again. I stared at the photo. At Chaniol's face in the lobby, and the thing I hadn't expected, the thing that landed harder than fear, was how ordinary he looked. How completely ordinary, standing there in a gray jacket, looking like someone's colleague, someone's ex who was maybe just trying to talk. How the surface of him communicated nothing. This is what I couldn't explain to people, I said. He looks normal. I know, Minjun said. That's what makes it work. The emergency protective order hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Over the weekend, Chaniol sent a message through a mutual connection, a former colleague of mine named Boyan, who called me on Saturday morning sounding genuinely distressed, and told me that Chaniol had reached her and asked her to convey that he wanted to apologize. That he wanted to talk. That if we could just talk, he'd withdraw the filing. I was standing in my kitchen when she called. Minjun was on my couch reading, and I looked at him and he set the book down and watched my face. I thanked Boyan. I told her the situation was being handled legally and she shouldn't be the messenger. I hung up. He's starting to pressure the people around me, I said. Yes. To make me feel isolated. Yes. Is it working? He asked. I looked at him. No, I said. He picked his book back up. I stood in my kitchen for a moment longer. Minjun, I said. He looked up. In the mall, I said. When you took your watch off. Chaniol looked at it. He recognized something. What did he recognize? He was quiet for a moment. My name, he said simply. Eventually. Or the company name, which amounts to the same thing. He held my gaze. He knew who he was looking at. And he still grabbed my throat. He grabbed it before he recognized me, he said. He let go after. I thought about that sequence. About a man who'd already filed legal documents, who'd already planted a surveillance device, who had a pattern and a playbook and a history, and who had still, in that particular moment, calculated wrong. He didn't think anyone was watching, I said. People rarely do, Minjun said, until they're already wrong about it. The hearing was at 10 a.m. on Tuesday. Attorney Beck presented the device, the voicemails, the incident timeline, the previous girlfriend's case, unsealed through a motion she'd filed, supported by the other woman, who had agreed to submit a statement. She presented the mall footage, which Minjun's people had preserved with what I understood was some urgency, on the day of the incident, before it could cycle. Chaniol's attorney argued that the device had been planted, that the mall incident was mutual, that the previous case was legally settled and inadmissible. The judge heard everything. She was a woman in her 60s who looked at Chaniol's attorney the way certain people look at things they have seen many times and continue to find disappointing. She granted the protective order. She also, and this was the thing Attorney Beck had been building toward, the thing she hadn't told me until she'd been certain, referred the surveillance case for criminal investigation. The device, she noted, went beyond civil matter. The systematic network access, the device placement, the video footage, criminal level. Chaniol's face, when the referral was announced, was the first genuinely uncontrolled expression I'd seen from him in 2 years. I was sitting in the gallery. Minjun was beside me. His hands were folded on his knee, completely still, and I watched his profile through the reading of the order, that organized, controlled face, and beneath the control a quality I couldn't have named in the earlier weeks but could name now, satisfaction. The quiet kind. The earned kind. Outside the courthouse, in the thin March sunlight, Attorney Beck shook my hand and left efficiently, because that was her mode. The 2 men who'd been at the mall and had appeared at various subsequent moments were standing at the base of the stairs. Minjun stood beside me. It's not finished, he said. The criminal investigation will take time. I know. He'll be careful for a while. Which means he'll likely look for other pressure points. I know that too. He looked at me. You're not afraid. I am, I said. But it's the manageable kind. I looked at the street, at the city continuing its business in the noon light. That's new. We walked to the car. His driver was waiting. I'd stopped registering this as remarkable, which was its own kind of information about how my world had shifted. At the door, I stopped. Minjun, I said. He looked at me. In the mall, I said, you stayed until my car left the parking garage. Yes. You didn't have to do that. I know. Why did you? He was quiet for a moment. Long enough that I thought he might not answer. Then. Because you looked back, he said. In the rearview mirror. And I wanted you to be able to see that someone was still there. I stood with that. You saw that, I said. From that distance, in a parking garage. I was paying attention, he said simply. I got into the car. He got in on the other side. The driver pulled into traffic. I watched the courthouse recede through the window. After a few minutes I said, I looked back again. I know, he said. I was watching. I turned to look at him. He was looking at the road ahead with that organized, contained face, but the corner of his mouth had moved in that way I'd catalogued, the almost smile that meant something more than it showed. Minjun, I said. Mm. I want to know what you are, I said. Not in a professional way. In the way where I'm telling you that I've been paying attention, too. And I want to know what we're doing. He was quiet. The city moved past the windows. I don't know yet what we're doing, he said. But I know what I want it to be. Tell me. He turned to look at me. Those still, deliberate eyes. This, he said. Whatever this is. Where you call me and I answer. Where you look back and I'm there. Where you tell me what you need and I don't decide for you. A pause. Where I don't walk past it. Because it's you. The car moved through an intersection. Sunlight came through the window at an angle and for a moment everything was light. Okay, I said. Okay? I'm not afraid of being wrong about you anymore, I said. I already checked. He looked at me for a long moment. Then, good, he said. And turned back to the window. That evening, back at my apartment, he stayed for dinner, real dinner, not a crisis, just food and a table in the quiet of a shared evening. When he left, he paused at the door. He reached into his jacket pocket and set something on the small table beside my door. I looked at it, a key. Narrow, plain, clean. My office has a back entrance, he said. No cameras, no directory listing. It exists on no database connected to your name. He looked at me. If you ever need somewhere to be that he can't find. I picked it up. It was warm from his pocket. Mine? I said. Yours, he said. I don't have a copy. He left. I stood in my doorway long after the elevator had closed. The key in my hand. My name on no document anywhere in the world that led to it. A room that belonged to no version of my life that Chaniol could map. Somewhere in the city, Minjun was being driven home in the dark, and in a building in Mapo a room was waiting with no connection to my fear, only to his choosing to give me the key. I thought about a man who watched rearview mirrors in parking garages. Who replicated T exactly. Who removed a watch with the slowness of someone who had all the time in the world and intended Chaniol to understand that. I locked my front door. Both locks. Force of habit. But for the first time in 8 months, the act felt like choice rather than defense. The difference was small and everything. I went to bed. I slept. Tell me, what moment would have broken you? The cold tile in the mall. The device on the router. The legal trap he'd been building while he was watching you cook. The key left on a table without a copy. Tell me in the comments which moment hit hardest. I read every one.